Good. How are you feeling?
A little nervous. We're talking about a key topic tonight. So, from a dad's perspective, I'm going to try and remain strong, withhold my emotions, but we'll see how that goes. I'm good.
Perfect. You see him sporting this Bodies by B. Got our new attire coming out. We'll be releasing our summer line soon, so stay tuned.
Gotta support the brand.
Ooh, it's been a struggle. Let me tell you, it's been a struggle. Oh, man. All right, so as everyone knows, mental health is a huge thing for me. I absolutely am a huge advocate for it. One, because I've been through it. I struggle with it every day. But two, just that's a part of my brand. That's a part of Bodies by B and Castle Collabs, and just making sure we're getting real with it and that we're hitting health and wellness. Y'all have heard me say this time and time again, that health and wellness is not just about, being fit and working out, but more so wellness, the definition of it is just the overall well-being of oneself. So with that being said, let's just dive right on in. I myself am very nervous as well too. I don't know if you can tell. But so last month, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. I decided to come out with my story, aka B story, and talk about my struggles, with mental health. It's pretty out there. If you don't know, it was a recap of just a few different things that I had to deal with myself. It was very hard, but very therapeutic at the same time. I think I told my dad for the first time, I was like, wow, that probably was one of the hardest things I ever had to talk about. And one of the hardest things I ever had to do is broadcasting your entire life. But basically, it was just a story. It was my story of how I came to be where I'm at now. I had a lot of follow-up questions after that. So we thought, hey, let's sit down. Let's talk about it. Let's be real. This is all live. So emotions are probably going to arise. There's going to be a lot of different things. But, that's a part of Castle Collabs and our brand of let's get real with it. So let's dive on in. I can tell you, if you weren't able to read, it is on our website. You can feel free to go back and read. But I struggled with mental health from such a young age. I went from being this happy-go-lucky or smiley girl that my mom used to call me to a very traumatized, emotionally unstable, sad, angry girl. The transition of B's story went from this little girl, aka Bree, into this adult version, which is now Brianna. And the way it transitioned is I went from being Bree to Bree to Brianna. And that was just like steps in my life of different things that I have gone through, from sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. I think the biggest thing was identity crisis and learning, myself all over again. So I had a lot of follow-up questions just asking kind of how my family dealt with it, how I dealt with it, particularly how my parents dealt with it. I know a lot of people were like, I can't even believe that any of the people that are in your story are still alive, knowing your dad. So, just gonna ask him a few questions, get his perspective. I thought, what's a better way to do this than get it live from him. So, a few questions I had were, as a father, where was your biggest struggle, or where do you feel like was your biggest drawback or setback when you found out about just the first little pieces of Bree?
Well, first of all, I want to say that how proud I am of Brianna to come out and share her story like she did. She got strength and courage that most people don't even have, and after serving the Marine Corps, you think you've got the strength until you hear a story such as this and identify with what she's gone through. So I couldn't be prouder of her for going through this. But as a dad, it was a struggle because, like she said in her story, I'm supposed to be her Superman. I'm supposed to be her knight in shining armor, that if anything goes on, that I'm supposed to be there to save her. And that was probably the hardest part there, is that, this is my baby girl. And I went through a range of emotions when I found out. One, from I let her down, how is this going to look in our relationship? Can she trust that Dad's going to be there for her again? So I had that emotion. Then I went through a very angry emotion, and I know that if I'd have found out earlier, what had happened, who did this, it would have been a different story. It would have been a much different story, and it wouldn't have been a good ending story. So I went through that range of emotions. Then I went through the range of emotions of simply how to approach her. Do we talk about it? Do we not talk about it? Is it one of those days? Is it not one of those days? So there was just a total different range of emotions that I went through as a father, and then I think there were some times that I even got maybe into an overprotective mode. No, I don't want you doing this. No, I don't want you doing that. No, I don't want you doing that. Because it can't happen again, not on my watch too, and is it one of them things? Maybe I should follow her just to make sure everything is going to be all right. But for me, that's what it was. It was just kind of going through just a whole litany of emotions, just as a dad, and then trying to overcome and come out of that on my end as well too. And then, now on top of that, I wanted to be the dad. Then I needed to be the husband to my wife to make sure that she was going to be good. How are we going to, should we shelter this from other people in the family? This is Bree's story to tell. So if everyone's asking what's wrong with Bree or why is she going there, she seems different. It's not my story to tell. So what do I tell other people? So there was just a litany of things that we had to go through that I'm just like, oh my goodness. So when she came to me and said that she wanted to share her story, I was just like, this is going to be huge. But I also told her that I think that this is a story that's going to help other women out as well. So I was excited to do it. But yeah, that was the initial thought going through it, was just a range of emotions, and that, my little princess, my baby girl, I wasn't able to protect her. And that's probably the hardest thing to hit. And I'm not gonna lie, it also makes it difficult too for anybody else that, she may date or eventually marry, is that I need to know that you're gonna protect my daughter at all costs. So, just the mind of a dad. That's what it is. It's the mind of a dad.
And we'll dive a little bit deeper. But to back that up, I think, on my end, for me, like you said, it was one of those things where, like I said in my story, we never really talked about mental health. Like, I put in there, most of the people who struggled from mental health, it was like, oh, they're crazy, or, oh, it was like this. And that's not like direct words from, mom, but it was one of those things of just like, they're off. And I think that was probably our biggest struggle between us, because one of my love languages that I found out is words of affirmation. And so if I feel like someone's not asking me a question or how I'm doing or how I feel, like, for my dad, I think growing up, he was also the man of his house. He got out right away, went straight to the Marines, and then it was just like, hey, bam, bam, bam. One life event happened after another. He went to the Marines, he had a kid, he got married, he had another kid, like, everything changed, and it was such a young age for him. Like, you were, 22 when I was born?
23.
Yeah, 23 when I was born, so it was just like, imagine that mentality. And then coming in for that, but just like, the biggest strain for us, like, I was like, he's not asking me. And to me, not asking me about it, not coming up and talking to me about it, was like, he doesn't care. Which is where I came to, like, my first point of, like, identity crisis. I didn't even know what that word meant, honestly, until, 3 years ago, probably. It was one of those things where it was just kind of like, what do you mean? Like, I'm Bree. Like, that's who I was all through high school. I'm Bree. It's just who I am. I blocked out a lot of my childhood, so I don't even know, necessarily how I was. My mom, like I said, described me as her smiley girl. And even to this day, like, I struggle. I'm like, people don't describe me as happy and enthusiastic. Like, that's just not me. And so I think, for both of us on our side, not talking about mental health, not knowing that was a thing, and being at such a young age, I went through my sexual assault, and I went through all of that at 11 years old. And I mean, to most people, it's like, oh, like, you're such a child. Like, that's such a child. It's so innocent. But at the same time, on that day, everything changed for me. I became an adult. And you kind of have to shift your thinking. And that's where I came in the mentality of, hey, this is who I am, and this is how I'm just going to be. And so one of my first points that I kind of wanted to touch on was the identity crisis part. I described it in my story, and I want to get your opinion on it as well too. But I came from a family of, up until about the age of 9, 10, where my parents weren't saved. Like, they weren't. And so when I was 9, 10 years old and I saw them get saved, and this, again, this is totally not, this is just thinking how I was when I was 9, 10, 11 years old. They did like a 180, and I'm like, wait, we're going to church 4 days a week, like, and you're telling me, like, after I saw just how we grew up and everything, and at that time, my parents were battling us being poor, and when I say we were poor, we were po, like P-O, like there was no poor with it. We had to move in with my aunt, so we went from having what I thought was a castle, because I had my own upstairs and everything, I'm a princess, but to sharing a room with my brother. And it was just one of those things where I felt like I kind of got mixed in the middle, and we didn't really talk about, mental health. And looking back now, I know for me, like, do you think us having those conversations would have changed the dynamic of our family? Or, like, what was that like in your family? Like, why didn't we talk about it?
Well, in the family, and just a little inside track to our family, we are, and anybody that knows us knows that we're pretty, I wouldn't say carefree, but we are pretty jovial, we like to have fun, we like to joke, we like to do that. And we're not an extremely affectionate family, or at least growing up, we weren't always hugging and kissing on one another. And there were some things even in my upbringing that was always tried to be hid. So it was never one of those things that I think it was kind of taboo that you go out there and you talk about things, whether it was mental health issues, whatever the case is, you just didn't really talk about those things. And I think that if you don't know about it, then it's not happening. And I think that's one of those things that I think a lot of families are just guilty of that as well too. If you don't know about it, then it must not be happening. And we, not until later on, and I'd never been a parent before, so.
I was a guinea pig child.
My wife had never been a parent before, and so we were just really trying to figure out what is the best route for us to parent. There's no really good book out there that says, hey, you rear the child this way. Every child is different. You have a lot of things that you actually go through. So I'm still trying to develop my identity as a husband, as a father, as a provider of the home, trying to lead my family how I think needs to be led according to, the Word of God. There was just a lot of things that I was going through that I just didn't really know about. I didn't have examples of really men in my family that said, hey, this is what you do, this is what you do. Great men, they just didn't have that example either. So there were some cycles that had to be broken, and unfortunately, we turned out to kind of be the guinea pig of that, trying to really break those cycles. So I think from an identity crisis standpoint, I'm not sure that it is, and this is my own opinion, I'm not sure that we don't have an identity crisis all the way through, because we're always, I believe if you're trying to challenge yourself, or if you're trying to better yourself, you're always going through some sort of identity crisis to try and find the best you.
That's true.
So I think
it's forever evolving.
It's ever evolving.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things too. I'm learning. I'm in a different phase now. I mean, my daughter's 27 years old now, so I'm in a different phase as just the father that's raising a daughter, to a father that's more of kind of a confidant or a friend or an advisor. So there's those things. And do I get it right all the time? Probably not. But I do with what I know how to do. But in dealing with the identity crisis is like, with no book, I made mistakes. And the other thing about that, and I think both hopefully Bree and Xavier have come to realize now, is that mom and dad have got to the point where they're willing to own those mistakes. It's like, hey, we failed here. We didn't do everything right. And I think that's the most important thing, to recognize that you don't have the perfect plan to raise a child. You both are going to be growing. And so there's no doubt about that, from the time that they're
pre-teen age. Ooh, Lord.
And honestly, that was part of my fault there, is that, okay, I hear the stories from everybody else that they go through those teen years. This is what she's doing now. But it's my fault for not diving in deeper, to just say, like she said, talk about it and come to her and say, Bree, I know that you have these teenage years, but is there something deeper that we have going on? I failed at that. That's what I did. I failed to ask those questions. So, those are one of the things, and again, that just goes back to what I was saying earlier. You just got to go through that motion. It's like, my God, you failed here. And then you think, where else have you failed? What else can you do differently? And then you start overcompensating other areas right there, and then find yourself just kind of spiraling a little bit out of control.
And I think, too, a lot that played a part of it was just the entire dynamic of how that day happened. When I arrived, I didn't really go into detail, but when I was 11 years old and this happened, I was walking home from school. This was the first event, major event that happened. I was walking home from school, and like I said, I froze. I was just like, hey, like, what do I do? So I got into like a different haze, and then like when I arrived to my parents, it was like so many different things going on in my brain. Like, I'm ashamed. I can't tell. Like, I can't do things, so I couldn't talk. And so I think even if y'all came and asked me, like, hey, what's wrong? Like, I didn't know what to say. And so I think that played a huge role into it. And I think we looking back now, we had to, like, own our parts in it of, like, yeah, I wanted y'all to come and ask me. Like, I wanted that. But at the same time, I didn't even know what to say. And I hear that a lot from, like, people, and they're like, I can't even put into words how I'm feeling. And I think, going forward, like, there was just a lot of different events that happened, and then I kind of grew, like you said, I evolved, I grew, and it was like, I never really showed those, well, I mean, I say I didn't, but they might have something different, but, like, I don't think I ever really showed those signs of, like, a lot of people, they say when something so traumatic happens, people start acting out. I just became very, very angry. I was very angry. I was very just, like, I was an emotional roller coaster. And I mean, already you can tell I'm an emotional person. But it was just like he said, one day you would walk in and it's like, oh my God, I have a loving daughter. And then the next day it's like, oh my gosh, the house is like on fire. Like, who is she? And so I think that played like a huge role into it, and just kind of going in and evolving. And I never really showed signs. And then I remember being in college, and I was in a really, really, really toxic, abusive relationship where it was just like, I was blaming everything on that. And I remember sitting down, and I remember this day like it was no other, sitting down, and me and my mom were actually fighting. And to tell you the truth, like, growing up, from like the age of 11 to 20, I would say probably even 21, honestly, because just because I told her first, like, doesn't mean things change. I despise my mom, not because of like who she is, and everyone knows my mom is amazing, but because I felt as a woman like I was never gonna live up to who Natasha is. And I think it was one of those things where I was so angry. Like, I was angry at you because I was like, you're supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. Like, you're supposed to protect me. I heard that my entire life. Like, this man has a Superman onesie. Like, he is Superman. Like, this. He is Superman. That's all I've known my entire life. And like, this woman, I'm supposed to be her. And like, I keep hearing, hey, this is the type of woman you're supposed to be. This is what you're supposed to do. And it was like, I wouldn't say despite. It was more envious. Like, I was never ever gonna be a good enough mother, a good enough woman, a good enough wife because of what happened to me. And then I got through college, and I remember sitting down with my mom, and my mom literally just looked at me, and she was like, I don't understand, but I'm like, what is wrong? Like, what did I do to you? Why do you hate me? Like, what is going on? Y'all, we were in the middle of the Madeline. We had just got done fighting. We were arguing. We were in Rockwall. Like, I remember we walked out of, like, TJ Maxx or something, and I'm just living. She's like, we're going to go have lunch. And it was just me and her. We got to Madeline, and she asked me that, and the next thing I know, I've got tears coming down my face, and I was just like, blah, 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 this happened. And she kind of sat there for a second, and she cried. And it was like, for the first time in 9 years, I was like, it was like I had been like this intense my entire life that I was kind of like, oh my gosh, I can kind of like let go a little bit. And so, coming from that perspective, like, mental health, again, still wasn't even really talked about. And it was one of those things where, like, I mean, you were evolving, you were growing, mom was growing, and it was just like, hey, anxiety and depression really aren't a thing. Pray about it, give it to God. And it's like, I struggled on that end because it was like, give it to God. I was angry at my parents. I was angry at the people who did this to me. I was angry at God because he let it happen. And so it was like, when I heard that, it was like, oh no, like, I'm just mad. Like, you can't tell me to give it to God when he's the one who did this to me. And so sitting down, I remember coming home and I couldn't face you. Like, I was like, Mom, I can't tell Dad. And I'd never seen you cry. I think I saw you cry one time before that in my life. And so it was like, oh my God. And so when my mom told him, I remember I went upstairs, my mom told him, and my dad came in, and even then we kind of just, I remember we just sat there and we were like it was so awkward.
It was new. It was strange.
It was. And I mean, I'm 20 years old at this time. I'm in college. Like, I've already been off for a year. I made a lot of mistakes my freshman year in college, and it was so out of like character for me. But I was coming off a depression of being told I was never going to be able to play basketball again. So all of that going through high school, till my senior year, telling me I could never play basketball again, which is the one thing that I found freedom in. That was my getaway. I felt like I belonged, and that was my identity. I was Brie Castile. Like, I was, 23. Like, that was me. Like, that's who I was. And I went through another identity crisis. And I'm like, what do I do? So naturally, I go to college. I start binge drinking. I start doing drugs. I am in this toxic relationship. And then I come back and my parents are like, oh, this makes sense. I'm like, what do you mean it makes sense? Like, I don't understand. Like, in my head, I'm just like, okay, you just have to deal with it. Like, you just get up. And, like, I hear a lot of people say this, and I'm sure you hear it too, but, like, when you sat down to have that conversation, with me, was mental health even, like, something in your head, or was it just, like, how do we fix this one situation?
No, it was a traumatic experience, and, I think most parents would consider themselves uneducated if they think they have a normal life. Until they have a traumatic experience and you think, oh my God, we've got to deal with the trauma. But the byproducts of trauma are everything from, just like you said, it's emotional, it's physical, it's mental. I mean, all of those states that you're in at that point in time just seem to just like, all of them get affected. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, so I don't know these things. So all I'm thinking is, oh my God, how can we fix this? How can we keep her from, spiraling out? I go into dad mode. It's my job to fix. Yeah. It's my job to fix at that point in time. So, I've got the range of emotions that I have to go through. And even to the point, it's like, why did she wait so long? Why did we could have attacked this so much earlier, just doing all those things. But that's kind of a selfish part of a dad at that point in time, because I want to go back now. It's the fix it mode again too. Yeah. Not really thinking about, okay, she's been harboring this for 9 years. Okay, what has she been going through at this point in time? It's no, we got to fix it. We got to get it going and all of that. So it was a whole bunch of things. And then the whole thing is now is that I've been on the opposite side to where I have been taking care of my baby girl, so I could come with a posture that is like, Dad's gonna fix it. We're gonna take care of this. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. And now I'm at a posture. It's like I have no idea what to do right now.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. I don't know how to act.
The awkward moment.
If I cry, does she cry? If I cry, does she thinks like, man, So he would have been able to help me anyway because he's not strong or anything like that, So you just have so many things that you go through.
Wait,
so
pause on that. So you just said something that is super key. What makes you think, like, what was ingrained in your head to make you think, like, if you cry or you show emotion, that's not being strong? Was that something that you were taught, or is that something you learned? Like, that's a huge struggle for men, and that's a huge, big part of mental health. So I'm curious to know, like, where did that dynamic come from to make you think, hey, if I show emotion, if I cry, I'm not strong?
Honestly, I can't say it was something that was taught. I don't want to say that. My mom or dad never said that this is what you do. Now, there were certain things that were stated that if you cry, that you really shouldn't cry or anything like that, or if you got excited, some snide remarks might go forward, but nothing was ever really taught there. I think mine at that moment right there was just was me. At Dad, in that moment, what posture am I supposed to have for my baby girl that's going through this right now? Mm-hmm. It's like, if I get emotional, she could get emotional and stir something up. So it was me, for that point in time was where I don't want to trigger anything. That was my whole goal. It was more of a mechanism. Let's not trigger anything on her part to see where we can get to something that might be able to progress on the other side. And not knowing, that you said, that awkward moment, it's like, do I talk? Do I not say? What do I ask her? How are you feeling? Of course, how she's doing. She's been hard for night. You go through these things like that. And I was just like, okay, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to act or anything like that. Should I just wait for her to open up and say something? Is she going to be angry at me? Is she going to be upset? Whatever it is, So I'm having this conversation with myself, whatever it is, just let it go through. I'm also thinking about, okay, what is something that I can just ease her, that just going to help her out. So I think it was just one of those things that you kind of look up. You
Yeah.
know? When you don't.
I get that. That's exactly what I did at 11.
Mm-hmm.
So
you don't experience something like that. It's like, what do you do? You know, I'm thinking here. You know, I'm trained to go to combat. I'm trained to do this. I'm trained to do all these things. But Dad is never trained for something like that.
Yeah.
You know, and the first instinct is just, you know, you want to get there. It's like, kill. Let's just go kill. Let's just do that. And that'll solve the problem. That wouldn't have solved the problem, though, because you would still be scarred. So.
Do you think you would have... Do you think coming from, like, your side of things and kind of knowing what you know now with, like, mental health and mental illness, you might have approached it a little bit different? Or do you still feel like it's kind of an untouched, uneducated subject for a lot of people?
I think it's an untouched, uneducated subject for a lot of people. And the reason I say that is because it goes back to, at that moment in time, you don't think about the collateral damage. You don't.
Yeah.
You don't think about the collateral on the individual. You don't think about the collateral of everybody else. Like I said, for me as a dad, I'm not necessarily thinking about how my wife is feeling at that point in time, because it's just about my baby girl right now and what I can do to fix that. You know, so people don't think about that. So in those moments, and then over a period of time, unless you're able to stop back, do an introspective look, and really ask, because I know it's one of those things. Not till after the episode a few years ago did I really get in mind. I just need to ask her how she's doing.
Yeah.
I just need to ask her how she's doing. I didn't do that because I didn't learn that until a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that people don't know. People associate what they see on TV, you know,
what they
or
see
with
on their
phone
phone
or anything like that. They just think, okay, somebody's on the spectrum. That's a mental thing. Or, you know, this person had a traumatic brain injury. That's what led to a mental thing like that. People don't think about the traumatic experience, you know, from an emotional or physical standpoint. You know, women that are abused or kids that are abused or people that have just gone through a severe, and men can be abused as well, or people that just been through severe trauma that leads to mental illness.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
I just don't think that there's enough really talked about that.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that was, you know, kind of, that was like what, the first, I would say there's really 3 phases into this entire thing of my mental illness journey, and you can, like, interject too. But that was kind of like the end of phase 1. So it was like phase 1, okay, it's out there. Mm-hmm. I think phase 2 hit when we never really talked about it, and so it was like still mental health was still, like you said, up until a few years ago, wasn't talked about, and that's part of phase 3. Like, phase 2 was more so, okay, I've told it, it's out there. Like you said, do I keep it in the home? Nobody really knew about it. There was a lot of things, you know, after the episode that did happen a few years ago, that people were like, we still wonder why. Like, I was known as the strong, the aggressive or assertive friend, or the, you've got everything together, you have a great household. And in my mind, all I could think was like, joke's on y'all, like, I'm doing a really good job of faking you. And I think phase 2 really started when my parents pulled me back from college. And they were like, nope, you are spiraling down, you have to come back and you have to prove to yourself. And in my head, like, that was another control thing. Growing up, it's so funny because, like my dad told you, he is a Marine. Can't say he was, because once a Marine, always a Marine. But he's a Marine, and so he is very, like, routine, structure, like, anal retentive, like, on everything. And I'm the same way, but mine is, like, exacerbated. And that comes from the fact of my anxiety. My anxiety is super high. You know, at such a young age, I lost control of something. I did not have control of my life, and I felt chaotic. And so I wanted to control and, like, structure and have routine of everything. And so he's already on level 8, and I just brought it to level 12. And so it was like when things kind of got out of my control, I would say buck wild, like, in my head. Like, they pulled me back from college, and I was like, I lost control again. Like, I lost control. I had control of what I could do and what I couldn't do and what I was doing when I was off, because I could hide that. I could hide that in college. Yeah, I'm fine. It's good. And half the time they would talk to me, it would be like, I mean, they really would only talk to me like, you have $20 in your account. Like, why do we see so much food? And it's like, what you didn't know is I was overeating. I was doing drugs. I was alcohol. So that's all I was doing. I was coping. But now I had to bring my emotions back into this house. I had to show you every day. And I remember my mom would be like, why you got such an attitude? Or my dad would be like, look, you're being ugly. And I'm like, I'm not doing anything. Like, stop asking questions. Like, I had been gone by myself for a year. Like, I don't stop. And it was just an emotionally unstable way of me dealing with what was going on. So into phase 2, it was like I kind of went down again. Like I don't have control over anything. And that was collateral damage in our household. Me and my brother did not get along. Me and my mom constantly fighting. And at one point, like, my dad was never a man of many words. He's very, as you can see, but he's not a man of many words. And so it was like, he got to a point where he was elevating his voice at me, and like things were happening, and it was a very chaotic household. Don't you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just crazy. And then that was kind of like phase 2. I was really kind of trying to find myself and finding my love in other people, and then I got into a relationship. It was actually I say it's my first big girl relationship, because I was with the same person all through high school, and then only for like a few months with or a year with the toxic one. But it was my first big girl relationship, and we were together for a long time, and it was the first time I was able to open up to someone and be like, this is all of who I am. And in that relationship, because that other person was dealing with like mental issues as well too, it was a war in my relationship as well too. And then it was like, hey, I started seeing, and I was envious because this person was talking to my dad, and my dad was giving him, the attention that he needed, and same with my mom. And I was like, what about me? Like, what's going on? And then I think that was more of phase 2. Phase 2 is more of like we're going to let her go free. I did. I went to Texas Tech. I didn't binge drink as much, but I mean, in Texas Tech we lose, and when you lose, you booze. So that's just how we do it. Wreck 'em. But it was kind of one of those things where I was still trying to find myself, and they were allowing me. And like that transition for me, I was like, I'm kind of in, I'm kind of out. Like I got that freedom again, and it was like, I'm kind of in. I think I got a little bit more stable. And things started becoming... It was good. It was a little bit rough up until I came back from college. But like, what was that like for you? I mean, you're sending your daughter off to college, like you're sending her off to school, and it's like, we're not even sure she's stable. We're not even sure like what stability looks like too. Like you had to kind of let your reins back a little bit of like, I'm the dad. Like I remember he'd be like, hey, my little princess, and I'm like, I'm not little anymore. I'm young. Okay, whatever. But like, how is that like on your mental, like having to deal with this and transition? Because truth be told, I don't think I ever asked you either. Like, how are you doing with this? And so like, how is that for you and your mental dealing with that dynamic of your son going into high school, your daughter's in college, you're with your wife, like y'all are trying to do that, and y'all just found out this huge secret. Like, how did that change on your mental?
Well, there was it was just one. I have to say that going to church for me was a big thing that I could do. I had friends, but again, I couldn't share the story with anybody. It was your story, so I couldn't talk to anybody about that. So I found solitude in God and going to church and doing what I needed to do on that end. The other part of it as well is that having a wife like I have, we communicate, we talk, so there are certain things we'll talk through, certain things we'll go through. So if she's emotional, she can bounce things off of me. Or if there's some things that I'm emotional about, want to go, and we talk through things, and we come to, we never did anything with the kids that we didn't agree on. So every time there was something that was going on with the kids, we always agreed on it, and we always had a united front on it.
Yeah, there was no. Didn't you already ask your mom? Like, if one said no, it was no for everybody.
So it was. I think it was just one of those things that when we knew we couldn't shelter you. What are we going to do? Put you in a bubble and let you grow old in a bubble? We recognize we can't do that. We also recognize it's like all of us are going to have to attack this. All of us are going to have to attack this. So there was a part that was like, you've got to get out there. You've got to see the world. You've got to get a few more natural, licks on your head so you know what you need to do and how you need to come out of that. But it was also one of those things too, is that you can't be far enough away that we can't get to you that quick. Yeah. Because for us, me especially, drop of a dime, I'm in the car, I'm gone.
Yes.
You know that. So
you have the record for driving to Lubbock.
Yes. So, it was one of those things too. So I guess I never really worried about my psyche or anything like that, because I was worried about everything else. And I think that helped my psyche a little bit too, because it could keep me distracted from getting into my own self and thinking like this. Like I said, the initial thing of the emotions. What am I going to do? What is she going to think? How's she going to go through that? having everything else to worry about kept my psyche focused on other things, so I could kind of keep distracted from just pinpointing on that and then me going crazy.
So how did you, because you and mom are two different people, like mom is very much, how do I do this? How do I keep him from doing that? And she worries. She isn't like, I can remember so many times you're like, babe, can you control it? Just listen, just let it be. Like, so how is that dealing with, like, you know, keeping yourself like in a good, because we're gonna go back to this because I don't agree with what he said, but a good mental state to making sure your wife is okay, making sure your kids are okay. Like, you're the man of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And so how was that, like, as a man, especially having to deal with, not only are you having to deal with this in your household, but you're having to make sure your psyche's okay when you go to work. This is pre-COVID, obviously, but like go to work and be in an office. Like, how would you cope with your mental to keep yourself sane?
I think I compartmentalize.
Bing, bing, bing.
I think I compartmentalize pretty good, and I try and do things. But here's the other thing too, like I said too, is having the wife that I have. She was all, like you said, she's always asking. She's like, "How are you doing?"
Yeah.
It's like, "I'm good." You sure? So you sure you're good? You need a break or anything? And if she saw that, the good thing about her is if I needed a break or anything like that, you know, she can get to the point where she would just grab some things like that. She'd grab me and she'd shut me down. She's like, "No, you need to shut down. I can see where it's going. You got too many things going on right now. We're going to shut down." She even took me and said, grab me one day, grabbed my golf clubs, and just took me to the driving range and said, "Hey, I need you to exhale." You know, so
I didn't know that.
So I had that. You know, so part of that was just, and again, I think with me and my wife, it's really just the communication. Because if you can talk about things, get things off your chest, it really helps you out.
It does.
You know, it's one of those things, and I think that's, and if I have to say in my upbringing, I think that was one of the bad things. We harbored things. Things didn't come out on the table. You know, it was do as I say, not as I do, or don't worry about that. That's none of your business. You never got the communication to say, hey, this is how we're going to get through this. Your mother and I wanted to do different things with you guys. Hey, let's talk about this. Let's get it out there.
Yeah.
You know, so I think with that, you know, the brother setting that I have at church is something that you can put things on the table discreetly, and you can find out, my God, there's men that are going through the same thing that I'm going through.
It's crazy, yeah.
And you realize it's like, okay, so I'm really not by myself. I'm really not going crazy or anything like that. There's what you have problems too.
My children are the only ones that are driving me crazy.
So you know, so I had that, and then you know, once we got through phase 3 and we came out of that to where we are right now.
We haven't got there yet.
I'm not gonna say that thing. I was like, that also helped put an ease as well too.
Yeah.
So which I know we'll get to that too, but you know, for me, and also too, the times that I did have the opportunity to go with you to the therapy sessions, I was like that. That's one of the things they pinpointed out. I was like, oh, so there's not any communication going on with them. I was like, okay, and that's what made me trigger. Is like, okay, I guess it is okay. How are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, don't egg or anything like that. Listen to what she has to say. Move on.
Yeah.
If that, come back and check and see what she has to say, and then move on. So it's not anything of just, ooh, I'm hovering over you and I need to know everything that you're doing. It's like, let's find out, and then the reassurance to say, I'm here. If we need to do something, we'll do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
So I think that was what it is too. I think really what helped me compartmentalize that is that I didn't have to be superhero after all.
Yeah.
I think I had to get to that realization myself. You don't have to be superhero.
You're still Superman, Dad. You always will be. It's the only man. Oh my God. Go get your onesie.
No. I can't believe you
Natasha
put that
says no.
I
Never.
can't believe you put that out there either. So if I get any comments on that, it's
So just to continue a little bit, I don't know if many of y'all have noticed, but a lot of people have been like, Brianna, you are LO Jr. Like, we are the same person. It's changed a little bit now, and I think it's because of, you know, going through some different things. Like, we're a pretty good mix. But I, too, compartmentalize, and that is how I handle my mental health for most of my life. I compartmentalize in work. I've been working since the age of 14. I compartmentalize in basketball, so when that was taken away from me, it was like my whole world was shattered. I compartmentalize in school, but I would say most of all I compartmentalize at success. I would think I was like 24, maybe 23 at the time, and I remember my dad telling me, he looked at me and he was like, you're more afraid of success than you are failure. And I was like, what? Success means money. Like, no, that's not it. And it's true. I wanted to be the best of the best of the best at everything I did. I still do. Still am. But at the same time, I was so afraid of being successful and setting the bar so high for myself that I almost psyched myself out of not being at the bar that I was. And that was in my personal life, in my relationships, in sports, and I had to be the best child, the best sibling. That put a wall between me and Xavier. A huge, huge wall. My brother was known. He was known as the star. He still is, actually, the star football player, and he was what I call the golden child. And it's a whole other subject. But it was just kind of one of those things where I was just like, I compartmentalized a lot, and I think that's what brought us to phase 3. This one's gonna be hard. I am still struggling a little bit with it, but phase 3 in our life started in July of 2018. I was in a relationship. Pretty much everyone kind of knows that. I was up. I had dropped out of college. I went to college for 3 years, came back. I had a great job. I loved it. As far as like what I was doing, I was like, yes, this is what I'm doing. I don't need a degree to do anything. And it was kind of one of those things where I kind of had to try. I was living in Dallas by myself. Like, I felt like a big girl. I was successful. I was in a great relationship. But in July of 2018, I really say before that, but that was like the final straw of it all. A lot of things changed for me, and I took a turn for the worse. My mental health, I wasn't taking care of it. I had gone back to isolating. I'm very much like I said, my dad, I compartmentalize, and when I compartmentalize, I isolate. I don't want to be around nobody. I don't want to talk to them. I started seeing myself like, everyone knows, like they always say, if you see one cat still, there's going to be like 18 other that follow. Like, we roll deep, and we roll deep like all the time. We're like a pack. And I started seeing myself not hanging out with my family. I was really isolating because I didn't want my parents, like, it got to a point where I was tired of being labeled, and like when I did have to tell my story to people, I was tired of people giving me sympathy or labeling me as like, oh my gosh, like this happened, and it was like, woe is me kind of thing. I didn't really like that. My family never did that at all, so it was just like, why are you doing it? It was weird to me. But in July, I took a turn for the worse. And then in September, things got really bad. I checked out. I was done. I felt like since the age of 11, I was fighting an uphill battle. Constantly fighting. And I mean, it's true when you deal with mental illness like anxiety and depression, and some would probably say PTSD in this as well too. You wake up every morning and you have to pick yourself up. And it's like, this whole, who is she? I didn't even know who I was. I could wake up in the morning. I could have had a great night the night before, but wake up in the morning and look at myself and just be like so mad and angry. And there was one night that happened, and I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And I was ready to check out. I was ready to be done. I was ready to call it quits. There was nothing else I could do. My relationship had failed. I was in a physical, emotional, mental, abusive relationship. It had just failed. I had just failed at something else. I couldn't keep a relationship. Didn't know why. And I tried to commit suicide. And it was selfish. But I think the worst part of it all was that I failed at that too. And I say that, but it's more so just like that's how I was thinking at the time, but I was exhausted. I couldn't do it anymore. And my mental illness took over me. And I remember that day like no other, of waking up. I vaguely remember like waking up. I remember my it was so weird. Like it was so weird that my brother was in town and both of my parents were together and my door was unlocked. If anyone knows me, they know I'm a door Nazi. I deadbolt, lock everything, and my door was completely unlocked. My dog was going crazy. I wasn't conscious whatsoever. But I think that was the change in our family. Like you said, you know, the episode a few years ago, that changed a lot. I didn't know what to do. So fast forward a little bit, I remember sitting in a park at one time. I told my dad I was going to the gym, which I did go to the gym, but I didn't come back when I was supposed to. It was to the point where I was thinking about doing it again. I had to move back in with my parents. While I was at the hospital, the nurses were absolutely rude to me. My mom had dressed me, and they were trying to take like my leggings off and telling me, it was like I lost control again. I was in a childlike syndrome. I didn't have control over anything. I had to move back with my parents. I went back. I'm 25 years old. Like, I'm 25 years old, and I just feel like a failure. And I remember my dad pulled up in his car next to me, and I don't know if you remember this, but he looked at me, and he was like, I love you. Are you ready? And I was like, yeah, I think so, because I can't do this on my own anymore. And I checked in. I don't even know how long I was in there, but I checked myself in. Well, my parents drove me. They drove me, and I remember saying goodbye to them. And honestly, in my head, I said goodbye. My goodbye was gonna be forever. I planned on going in there and not coming out. And I was in there for what felt like eternity. But I did a lot of self-reflecting. And I realized in that moment, like you said, you know, this is where we come together. This is where Castile, like the Castile family found its foundation. Like, now, yeah, we're a huge family, like we are always together, but I think the core of our family was there. And sorry, I don't get emotional, but I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for, like, talking about it and, like, going through it and everything. And, like, I think that's a huge thing that people need to realize is, like you said, there's so many other people that are going through this. And so, you know, like, dealing with it, like, I owe my life to my family. And I owe, you know, just who I am and everything I went through. And that goes through phase 2. Like he said, he sat into therapy and stuff with me. And him and my mom, like, people talk all the time, like, who's your best friend? Everyone knows Cameron, she's my, like, that's my girl. Like, everyone knows that. But, like, my parents are. And I think that goes back to our, you know, we all did a self-reflection. I did a self-reflection on who I am. I'm able to sit here almost 3 years later, like, in September, it'll be 3 years. Like, I'm able to sit here and talk about this, or how old am I? I'm about to be 28. So
next week.
Yeah. 17 years of a difference of being a little girl to never being able to say anything, to having a platform that we can talk about this to, and, like, I hope this, like, reaches people. So it's just, like, I know I reflected, but, like, I'm curious to know, like, what was your reflection on all of this? Like, you know, you said it kind of changed a little bit. Like, what was your reflection of, oh my God, like, one traumatic thing happened, and then, like, my daughter, like, you walked in on me and I was unconscious. Like, you picked me up out of the shower. And so it's like...
Actually, we dropped your brother off, and I told him to get upstairs immediately because I had to park the car. I wasn't going to try and find a parking spot and then go up, so... I don't even think I stopped rolling by the time he jumped out to go up there and get me. But what I remember vividly from that is that all I want to do is get upstairs, grab you, and get a hold of him. So when I got upstairs to help him get you in your room, we put a blanket around you, and I remember just holding you, and I was just kind of rocking with you and everything. And I even remember when the paramedics came into the apartment like that, I was kind of experiencing problems like, I know I need to let her go because she needs to get to the hospital, but I don't trust anybody in this moment right now. I just don't trust anybody in this moment right now. And I knew we were going to be following you right behind. I knew we were going to be staying there because, especially with your mom, she's like, no, not until I know my baby's right. She'll be up 48 hours straight until she knows that she's going to be right and that. But I remember looking at that, and then your mother and I had some conversations, and we were talking about, it's like, we've got to get her help. She's got to get help. You know, something's got to come out of this as well, too. So, and And I don't think it was ever a point in time for us that we were worried about what anybody else was going to think or anybody else was going to feel on that. It was just that I'm not losing my baby girl. I'm not losing that, you know. Your mom is the same way too. Whatever it takes. If we had to move states,
I remember you telling me that. You're like, "Do we need to pack up and leave?"
We will move states. I just remember when you had your kidney, when you were down at UTSA and you had your problem with the kidney. And we went down there for a couple of days, and I'm working, you know, going to the hospital and doing all of that. And when they weren't going to release you, all your mom did was look at me like that. She was looking at me and said, I go extend the hotel. You know, her baby girl, she's like, we are not going nowhere until I know things. So I went and I extended the hotel. I was like, we're going to be here a little bit longer. But, you know, it's at that point in time, it was just really about getting you better no matter what.
Yeah.
That's really what it was at that point in time. But it was also a reflection. I think it was also an opportunity for me to say, okay, how am I now going to be the dad moving forward?
Yeah.
You know, I think it was that. Your mom may have just done the same thing. It's like, okay, how am I going to be the mom moving forward too? And it's, you know, I know we'll close out here in a little bit with regards to that, but just like going through all of that created me to be the dad. Like I said, I could move from being a father, even though you were going through those experiences. I could move from a father that was just going to be the father to be the father that was like, hey, you know what, Bree? You have control now. I just want to help wherever I can. I just want to be that advisor. I just want to do that. And we talk maybe 2-3 times a week now. Well, we hang out.
No, we hang out like 2 or 3 times a week. We talk every day.
So it was one of those things that we were just like, you know, it was just one of those relationships to where we found each other. And I also think it helped your brother too. Once he found out what was going on, and he was just like, I didn't know this was going on. And so it's, you know, it's cliche because people say, you know, it's those circumstances that bring you closer together, but it brought us closer together because of exactly what you said before.
Yeah.
We had to do an introspective look at ourselves individually.
Yeah.
This wasn't about Bree, because what Bree went through is something no one ever should have to go through, but the collateral hit everybody else, and we need to look at ourselves and say, how are we going to come through this?
Yeah.
How is this going to we could either remain the victim or we could become the victors. Yeah. That was the options that we had. And I think, and you said it in yours too, it's like, you know, you own your truth. You own your truth. So it's like one of those things I say, I own my truth, I know exactly what it is, but my truth doesn't define me. I'm the victor in this. I don't have to reign the victim. And I just think that, to me, that's the epitome of courage right there. When you go through something like that, it's like, it happened to me, I'm gonna own it, but it's not gonna define me. And I think that is, and a lot of people just, I can't sit here and say I've had a traumatic experience to do like that. I've had experiences, but nothing compares to that. You know, so it was.
Well, I think we all have our own traumatic experiences. That's one thing like I had to learn is like, you know, what is a big deal to me may not be a big deal to you, or something that's a big deal to you might not be to me. I think we each have our own traumatic experiences, and that goes to like, you never really know who you're gonna touch.
True.
I have experienced that more in the past 3 years than I ever have in my life. And when I say that, it's like, it's weird because I'm not the type of person who like just go out and tell like my whole life story. But I've come to the point now where it's no longer, like you said, it's no longer my story, it's my truth. And there's been so many times that my truth, like even from releasing this, that my truth was like, I went through that same thing too. I did this, or like this happened to me, and it's so nice to see on the other side. I've come across people, random people, strangers who I've just kind of talked to, and I'm like, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, that happened to me too. And they're like, oh my gosh, and they've reached out to me, or they've said something, and it's like, that day that you said that to me, like, you helped me. I remember one of my really good friends from high school, he was going through a lot, and he was like, I don't know if you know this, but you talking to me and you tell me some of the things you went through, you saved my life. I was thinking about committing suicide, and you talking to me for an hour, and I didn't even know. Like, I was just like, oh, what's going on? Let me know. Like, are you okay? One of those comments, he was like, you saved my life. Like, you really did. And I think that's one of the biggest things I wanted to, you know, like you said, close out on this is like, mental illness is not something we should shy away from at all. We actually should go head forward. Every day, it's a struggle for each person. Just think about it. Every day that you wake up, it's a struggle for each person to even find themselves. We never know what anyone has gone through. I mean, I lived in the same roof for 9 years and nobody knew exactly what I was going through. And it's like let's stop looking at people as crazy, and let's stop looking at them as something wrong. But like you said, let's get help. Like, let's all go together. You never know when telling your truth is going to help someone else. You never know when it could help, somebody. I mean, there could be something you're put there in that place for a reason. Like, I totally believe that nothing is coincidental. It is very intentional. And so I think, talking about mental health and mental illness, the only thing I really want to say is you're not alone whatsoever. You're not. If you feel like you are, you've got two people who have been on both sides of it before, that are here to help. Also, there's about 5 other people, no matter what, when you're walking by, there's about 5 other people that you walk by every single hour that are going through something that deal with their own mental health issues. Just because you're dealing with it doesn't mean you're an outlier. It's actually pretty normal. And if you do need resources of where to get help, I know my dad would be the same way too, will definitely help you find that as well.
That's what this platform is about. It's about collaborating. It's about, we say real. Real stands for something. I mean, it's an acronym. And if you go to the website, you'll see that. But we had a saying in the family too. Show me the perfect family, and I'll show you a family that's lying to themselves. Because there's just no such thing.
Yeah.
We can look at everybody in this world today. COVID kind of set the stage for that. But at that point in time when COVID hit, everybody in the world, not to mean everybody, was dealing with something.
Yeah.
Okay. If it was only COVID, they were dealing with something. But if we really think about the reality of it, everybody's dealing with something. This thing called life, those curves at every single one of us. So we're all dealing with something. Some people handle it differently, but we shouldn't look down on them just because they handle it different or they've got something that we're not used to seeing or anything like that. No, it should all be about, hey, how can we help one another?
Yeah.
How can we come to that platform and say, hey, look, I either have an experience that I went through this that I can help you out, or you have an experience that can help me out. It goes both ways, so I agree.
And we're a living testimony to it. Like, I mean, look at us. We're able to sit here now, and we're closer than ever. Our family is closer than ever. We're able to use it as a platform. Like, if you are someone yourself who's struggling with mental illness, you've got someone to talk to. If you are trying to figure out how to do the dynamics, like you said, this is exactly what we're doing. This is a part of it. If not necessarily, it doesn't have to be business to business, but we want it to be a place. People always ask us, how is your family so close? Stuff like this. Like, these are normal conversations that we have. Like, these are normal. This is the first time we've actually had kind of like this dialogue, but these are normal conversations. And if you have any questions or you have anything that you want us to discuss or you want to kind of like see different things or talk about, DM us, send us a Facebook message. You can email us. Everything is on the website. You definitely get that. We're definitely rolling out more stuff. We'd love for y'all to come in. Like, if y'all have ideas and y'all want to get on here and y'all want to talk about something, so be it. Because, listen, I don't do well in front of the camera. So, if you want to come on, Ella will talk to you all day, all day long. And so, we really appreciate y'all joining in with us. Like I said, if y'all need anything, if y'all need any help, let us know. Also, thank you for listening and allowing me to share my story and get it kind of out. This is very therapeutic for me as well, too.
They're very therapeutic for me also.
Very, very. So, thank you. We really appreciate y'all. We cannot wait. We'll be rolling out more. We're doing more podcasts, more videos, everything. Having more guest speakers and everything as well too. So that's it. And like we say, let's get real.
Yeah, let's get real. But more importantly, share your story with us. We want to hear your overcoming stories, and we will share that as well. So thank you. God bless.
Bye.